Hey everyone! Before we begin today's episode, I would like to remind you guys again to please check out some of my other YouTube channels in the description down below. I have a Star Wars Battlefront 2 Classic Focus channel where I review custom maps and mods on the Battlefront Max channel. I do gaming reviews on the Kanoa Reviews channel, and I've also recently started a Minecraft adventure channel where I play through classic adventures with friends. You can find the links in the description, and please subscribe to those channels if you like what you see. The year was 1936. The world was on the brink of a global conflict with nations in Europe, Africa, and Asia claiming more dominance with ruthless leaders at the helm. Talks of war clamored through the halls of politicians and officials in neighboring nations, and the fear was that this globe would face another world war, this time on a much larger scale than the war to end all wars. But in the early 20s, something occurred that did not get picked up until the late 20s and early 30s, and now took the forefront of the newspapers everywhere. Somewhere in the 1920s, a person got infected by a terrible virus. Not much is known about the origins of the virus, nor how the person got infected. Some speculated it was by a rabid animal or fungus, but no one was 100% sure. The whereabouts of the initial infection are also unclear, since the phenomenon did not get picked up until it had spread to multiple continents. Some believed South America to be the origin, with its vast, sprawling Amazon forests hiding many deadly secrets, though others believed it to be the hot weather of the Middle East or even the north of Africa that caused the initial spread, and from there invaded the lives of the Spanish as well. The virus worked slow, and the initial symptoms were not that different from a common cold. That is why when the overall situation got too serious and the alarm bells were ringed, many people were already infected. We are talking about millions. With long-distance travel becoming ever-increasing and easier undertaking, the virus spread to multiple continents and had now grown to its fruition and had shown its rotting yellow teeth. For you see, the virus eventually turned one into a mindless, rotting corpse that still retained bodily functions in the sense that it could walk and grab onto things. It was driven by the instinct to feed and would only be interested in living flesh. But they moved slowly, which was the only safe and grace the people had who were facing them. News back in that time traveled slow, often several days or maybe even weeks behind. Many families did not own a radio and were entirely dependent on daily newspapers. But to some, it almost seemed like sensationalistic news propaganda. There were pictures in the papers and articles written, but to citizens of countries like Britain, Canada, Norway, Japan, or Russia, there were no single signs of an infection. In their mind, they did not even realize the severity of the problem at hand. But by 1936, it had come to light and most understood the grave nature of this undead infection, and multiple world leaders had gathered to look for an answer. The hordes of the zombies had grown to such proportions that they moved in swarms of hundreds of thousands at once sometimes. Countries that were under attack like Spain, Turkey, and Mexico called for aid from neighboring nations. Many other country leaders realized they indeed needed to help with this threat, or it would spread all across the globe, but at the same time keep the virus from infecting their own turf. Thousands of refugees fled the borders, making the chance of an infection all the more likely. Because of this, meetings were long and sluggish, often not coming to a sensible conclusion for quite a while. Brazil was also one of the countries that had coped with a large amount of zombies in their rainforests. They had pleaded for help too, but the thick jungle area where the front was obscured the sense of scale of the zombie horde that was currently in their country. Not all nations were all that vocal about coming to the aid of the armies that fought the zombie threat. They were mostly the Allies who vowed to do something about it. But demand for help slowly gained popularity in other countries like Italy. Though its government was fascist with Mussolini at the top, the news of the zombie wars in Spain could not stay outside the borders. Though it was still on a very small level, the need to stand up against these undead creatures gained support in local villages and towns, that had also rang a bell with the fascist higher-ups. Though the officials had no intent to come to Spain's aid, they did realize that they had to increase their fighting capabilities if it were to come to fighting off the Horde within Italy itself. In terms of building plans, the government would focus on both building more factories on land, but also more naval dockyards. The zombies could not swim, and so a last desperate resort would be to move as much people to islands in the hope to escape the zombie threat if it got too dangerous. Technology-wise, Italy was far behind compared to nations like Germany and Britain. Some of their weapons and tech still dated before 1918, and even though the zombies could not shoot back, they had to be stocked and equipped as effectively as possible to deal with this huge army of undead. US citizens in every town gave them flowers and chocolate, and wished them good luck on fighting the undead tyranny. An evil that for so many Americans was still far from their bedrooms. Though the zombie horde that was currently active in Spain posed a threat to all of Europe, the horde that currently raged on against Turkey could also possibly find its way onto European soil. At the Suez, British soldiers desperately tried to hold off the zombies that tried to head westward. It was a heavily militarized zone, and for the moment, no one feared they would get through. But the zombies roamed ever more, never stopping to rest, never succumbing to fear. A lot more needed to be done before Earth had rid itself from this new undead terror.